Murder in a tangled web of love. When your wife is also your sister-in-law, true 1880s crime. On a cold October night in 1880, George Wheeler walked into a police station with a confession that shocked the city. He had strangled his sister-in-law. But the truth was far more twisted. Della Tilson was not only his sister-in-law, she was also his secret wife. October 20th, 1880 to 11:55 p.m. A tall, middle-aged man walks through the cold night into a police station in Washington City. Calm, composed, he looks an officer in the eye and says something that would send chills down anyone's spine. "I've come to turn myself in. I just strangled my sister-in-law, Della Tilson. Here is the key to room 14 on 23rd Street. That's where you'll find her body." There was silence. For a moment, the officer thought it might be a cruel joke. There had been no warning signs, no missing persons report, no signs of violence. But something in the man's voice, the steadiness of his tone, made them take him seriously. The man identified himself as George Wheeler. When police arrived at room 14 on 23rd Street, just as Wheeler described, they found the scene exactly as he said. Inside was the lifeless body of a young woman, beautiful, well-dressed, elegant in appearance, now cold and still. Her death had been caused by strangulation, but this wasn't just a random act of violence. As the investigation unfolded, what shocked authorities and the public alike was the dark, tangled web of relationships behind the murder. George Wheeler had not only been involved in a secret romantic relationship with Della Tilson, his wife's own younger sister, but the three had actually been living together under one roof. As police began their official investigation, they went door to door in the neighborhood surrounding room 14 on 23rd Street. They spoke with neighbors, hoping to understand more about the victim, the household, and the man who had just confessed to murder. And then came the twist. According to multiple neighbors, the woman found dead in that room wasn't Wheeler's sister-in-law at all. She was his legal wife, the woman he'd lived with for years, the one everyone on the block knew as Mrs. George Wheeler. So why had he told police she was his sister-in-law? Was it a mistake? A slip of the tongue? Or was it a calculated lie? As officers dug deeper, they discovered that only 3 people had been living in that house. George Wheeler, the woman now confirmed as his wife, and another woman, his wife's younger sister, who had also been staying with them for some time. However, on the night of the murder, the sister-in-law had not been home. That revelation changed everything. Suddenly, the original statement Wheeler gave to police was in question. Why claim to have killed a different woman, his sister-in-law, when the victim was clearly his wife? This inconsistency cast a dark shadow over his entire confession. Investigators now had a new theory, that Wheeler may have been hiding something deeper, something more shameful or damning than murder itself. Perhaps there had been a love triangle, or a toxic family dynamic buried beneath the surface. Perhaps Wheeler had become emotionally or romantically entangled with his wife's sister, and in a moment of rage or desperation, he killed the woman who stood in the way of his fantasy. Or maybe it was even more complicated. What began as a simple, clear confession was quickly unraveling into a case full of lies, betrayal, and mystery. As the interrogation continued, George Wheeler finally broke down and revealed a far more twisted truth than the police had anticipated. It turns out the woman he killed was Della Tilson, but she wasn't just some distant relative or a roommate. According to Wheeler's confession, Della was his sister-in-law, the younger sister of his wife, Mary, and she was only 21 years old at the time of her death. Wheeler had been married to Mary for nearly a decade. On the surface, they lived an ordinary, modest life. But behind the closed doors of their shared home, a dangerous secret had been growing. It began years ago, Wheeler said, when Della came to live with them. At first, she was just a young woman needing a place to stay. But over time, something changed. What started as innocent cohabitation turned into flirtation. And soon, flirtation gave way to a full-blown secret affair. George Wheeler, husband to one sister, was now secretly involved with the other. He confessed to police that he and Della had been carrying on their relationship in secret for quite some time. under the same roof, behind his wife's back. Asterisk, asterisk, but it didn't end there. Della eventually became pregnant with Wheeler's child. The moment shattered any illusion that they could keep their secret hidden. Della, overwhelmed with emotion and fear, began demanding that Wheeler take responsibility for her, for the baby, and for the future they'd created together. Wheeler was now a man torn between two women, his loyal wife of 10 years, and the younger sister he had betrayed her with. Caught in a web of deceit, he made a decision. One he claimed was meant to restore some sense of order, but would ultimately destroy everything. Asterisk, Wheeler told Della that he would take care of her and the baby, but not under the same roof. To avoid exposing the scandal to his wife, he arranged for Della to move into a different home. He promised her safety, independence, and financial support. But fate had other plans. The baby died shortly after birth. The loss devastated Della, and it sent Wheeler spiraling further into guilt, shame, and fear. The secret was no longer just about an affair. It had become a graveyard of broken promises and lost innocence. Asterisk, in a last-ditch effort to start over, Wheeler moved both women, his wife Mary and Della, out of the city. They relocated together to San Francisco, hoping a new environment would bring peace. But the city offered no sanctuary. Work was scarce, and money grew tighter by the day. Wheeler couldn't secure steady employment in the Bay Area. The financial strain only intensified the emotional tension within the household. Desperation was setting in. So once again, Wheeler made another move. He relocated the three of them to Placer County, where he found work as an engineer. But even with a new job, the emotional weight of their secret and the baby they'd lost followed them like a shadow. When George Wheeler moved his complicated household to Placer County, he hoped for a fresh start. But what he found instead was a new fracture in an already fragile story. It was there that Della Tilson met a man named George Packham, someone entirely outside the twisted love triangle that had entangled her life for years. This time, Della didn't keep the relationship a secret. She told Wheeler directly she had feelings for George Packham. She wanted a future with him. And for the first time, Wheeler found himself on the outside looking in. The woman he had betrayed his wife for was now falling in love with someone else. Asterisk, George Wheeler, torn between two women, loved them both in different ways. He loved Mary, his wife of 10 years. And he loved Della, the sister-in-law with whom he shared a dark, forbidden past. But Della was moving on. Though he didn't lash out immediately, those emotions, jealousy, loss, shame, began to simmer. The tension inside their small shared living space was unbearable. Three adults crammed into a single home, each with secrets, suspicions, and unspoken wounds. Della, for her part, tried to live honestly. Her new relationship was not hidden, and she believed she had a right to pursue happiness, even if that meant breaking free of Wheeler's grasp. Wheeler, however, had other plans. He told Della he wanted her to end the relationship with George Packham. He pleaded with her, promising a new life back in San Francisco, a new home for just the two of them, a second chance. Asterisk, surprisingly, she agreed. Wheeler moved Della and Mary into a small apartment in San Francisco. To the outside world, it might have looked like a family trying to rebuild. But inside that apartment, the emotional air was suffocating. Wheeler and Della lived there together for nearly 5 months until the night that would change everything. 1 month before Della's murder, confusion swirled in the neighborhood. People couldn't tell who was who. Some neighbors believed Della was Wheeler's wife. Others thought Mary was. The identities blurred, as did the lines of love and betrayal. It was a twisted domestic puzzle, and it was about to shatter. According to Wheeler's testimony, on the night of the murder, he left the house for what he described as a business meeting with a local police officer. He said he was looking to start some sort of work partnership with law enforcement. But when he returned home, something was different. He walked into the apartment and found Della alone in their shared bedroom. She was wearing gloves and a hat dressed. Strangely, almost as if she were about to go somewhere. Wheeler asked her, "Della, where have you been? And why are you dressed like this?" And then, something unexpected happened. Della fell to her knees before him. Her voice trembled. Her eyes welled with tears. And she confessed. She told Wheeler that even though they had moved to San Francisco together, she had never stopped seeing George Packham. In fact, just that night, she had met with him again. But the part that broke Wheeler? Della told him she had made a decision. She and George were going to move to Sacramento together to start a new life as husband and wife. It was in that moment that something inside George Wheeler snapped. All the secrets, all the sacrifices, all the shame. It surged into one overwhelming flood of emotion, jealousy, heartbreak, and rage. He described it like a fire bursting inside his chest. Without thinking, without speaking, he lunged at Della. And in a horrifying act of violence, he wrapped his hands around her neck and squeezed tight. She struggled. She gasped. But he didn't stop. By the time it was over, Della Tilson was dead. The room was silent. The woman he once claimed to love now lifeless at his feet. What's chilling is that Mary, his wife, was not home during the murder. She had no idea what was happening inside the walls of the apartment that night. No screaming, no signs, just silence. And when she returned, nothing would ever be the same. It all began when the police received a detailed, first-person confession from a man named Wheeler, a confession that would unravel a twisted triangle of love, jealousy, and ultimate betrayal. Wheeler didn't hold back. He spoke candidly about everything, from the very beginning of his relationship with a woman named Della Tilson, all the way to the tragic night that changed everything. Wheeler had been living in Placer County with his wife, Mary, and Della Tilson, a young woman he claimed was his sister-in-law. But in truth, their relationship was far more complicated and far more intimate than most people suspected. Della, during their time together, formed a close romantic bond with another man, George Packham. Their relationship was not hidden. In fact, Della had told Wheeler directly about it. She was open about her feelings, perhaps too open for Wheeler's fragile emotional state. What made matters worse was that Wheeler, despite being married to Mary, was deeply, almost obsessively in love with Della. It was a dangerous kind of love, unreciprocated, unresolved, and burning quietly beneath the surface. The three of them, Wheeler, Mary, and Della, lived together in a small, cramped space. The environment was tense. Pressures mounted. Emotions became harder and harder to suppress. Wheeler often found himself caught in the agony of seeing the woman he desired so deeply show affection towards someone else. And yet, he never confessed this pain to his wife. Eventually, Wheeler convinced both women to move with him to San Francisco, hoping a change of scenery might also shift the emotional tide. They moved into a small apartment together, and for a few months, things seemed manageable. But underneath the surface, resentment and heartbreak continued to fester. Then came the night of the crime. Wheeler told the police that he had left the house to meet with an officer about a supposed business matter. And he returned. He found Della in their shared room, dressed oddly, wearing a hat and gloves. Surprised, he asked, "Della, where have you been? And why are you dressed like that?" That's when everything unraveled. Della, filled with guilt, knelt before Wheeler and confessed. She told him that she had continued seeing George Packham behind his back, even after they had moved to San Francisco together. Not only that, she revealed she had made plans with George to move to Sacramento and start a new life as husband and wife. That confession shattered something inside Wheeler. In his own words, he described the moment as if something ignited in his heart, a flame of betrayal, anger, and overwhelming emotional pain. He couldn't think. He couldn't reason. All he saw in that moment was the image of the woman he loved promising herself to another man. Driven by rage, Wheeler lunged at Della and strangled her. When it was over, Della lay lifeless on the floor. Wheeler sat there, staring at what he had done. The woman he adored, the one he had risked everything for, was gone, taken by his own hands. What's perhaps most chilling is that his wife, Mary, was not even home at the time. She had no idea what had occurred in the place they all shared. The police later interviewed Mary, and she confirmed much of Wheeler's confession. She admitted that Wheeler had been unusually close to Della, and that they had all lived together in a bizarre domestic situation. Some neighbors had even mistaken Della for Wheeler's wife, so blurred were the lines in this tangled household. Wheeler, seemingly overcome by guilt and unable to live with what he had done, didn't try to flee. He turned himself in at the police station and described the entire event in painstaking detail. His arrest came on January 23, 184X, and unlike many killers, Wheeler did not deny his crime. He did not try to fabricate an alibi. He owned up to it completely, painting a picture of a man whose emotions had spiraled beyond his control. But while his confession was sincere, the law could not excuse murder, especially not a murder born of jealousy and unspoken obsession. This wasn't just a crime. It was a psychological breakdown. A man who couldn't choose between two women ended up losing both. This tragic story reminds us of the dangerous power of suppressed emotions, hidden relationships, and the lies we tell to keep love alive. Sometimes, the heart doesn't break all at once. It fractures silently, slowly, until one moment of truth shatters everything. Wheeler believed that love could conquer all. But love, when twisted by jealousy and possession, can turn into something unrecognizable and deadly. In the end, the greatest tragedy wasn't just Della's death. It was the collapse of a life built on secrets,